excited about this interview. I met Gillian Goerzen not that long ago, but it felt like I had met like a friend. And so welcome to the interview with Gillian Goerzen. I am so excited to be here and to share her and what she is up to with all of you that are listening in. Here we are, we're talking about perimenopause and athletes and being athletes and how to optimize our training, our nutrition and our recovery so you can be in your best health and you can perform both in life and in your sport. And Gillian, I'm going to just give you a quick introduction because what I really want you to do is share a bit of your story. But where it began is Gillian hated her body when she was at the age of 5. And 20 years eating disorder, then completing an Ironman, taking on life, learning a very different approach. And that's what we're going to hear about. Gillian is incredibly accomplished, starting with her undergrad in kinesiology and just doing a deep dive into fitness and yoga and to different modes of fitness, TRX and pre and postnatal certified fitness leader of the year. I mean, it just goes on. So we're so delighted to have you. And thank you. Thank you for sharing yourself. So,
well, gosh, thank you.
Well, there we go. No, I truly am excited for this conversation. So I'm just going to turn it right over to you because that's what I want people to hear about is let's start with your story.
Okay. I'll try to keep it brief because otherwise, as we were just saying, we could probably talk for hours. Yeah, as you mentioned, it was around 5 that I first remember having these negative feelings towards my body. By about 8, and I was typical, kid on the playground. I was in a bigger body. And so, of course, kids notice those insecurities and they prey on those. And so I did experience bullying. I experienced name calling and commentary. And, looking back, I can see lots of other ways that I was influenced around my experience with my body. By about 8, I put myself on my first diet. And when I was 15, I started binging and purging, which I can now, as an intuitive eating counselor, look at and go, oh, it's because I was restricting. I don't know that it was purely initially a binge as much as it was response to being underfed. But ultimately that led me to purging, which led me to 5 years with an eating disorder. And nobody knew I had an eating disorder. It was very, very filled with shame and guilt and all of those awful feelings. And it wasn't until I was about around 19, 20, I kind of found my way kind of accidentally, maybe by kismet, into running. I was introduced to a bunch of people who ran because running is fun and you can do it at your own pace. And I was like, what? It's not a gym teacher yelling at you. I could run because running is cool. Okay, cool. And I got into running, and then I discovered triathlon, and I thought that's really cool. And in retrospect, I think there was still elements of disorder around it. I was like, well, what's a healthy way to just cover up the fact that I'm just over exercising? Let's train for Ironman. And thankfully, there was many lessons, as I'm sure you can relate to, that came out of Ironman, aside from maybe a little bit of a cover up on my over exercising tendencies. And over time and through all of those experiences, at the time I was doing my kines degree and I started really getting curious. At the time I was, the year I did Ironman, I actually led a camp for kids called Girl Power. And I actually started diving into like media training and understanding the impact of media. And I got really, really curious. I was like, whoa, where are all these ideas about bodies coming from? And it was like my own immersion. At the same time, I'd done some counseling and I'd done a lot of healing work around my relationship with body, and the story continues from there. I went into kines thinking I was going to be a physio. That was my way past to physiotherapy, and I fell in love with helping people find their way to be healthy and find their way to move their body. And so I really lived in the health sphere. I worked in corporate fitness for 14 years, and then I broke apart and decided to start my own thing. And I can't remember how many years in I am now, but I work directly with clients now, and I'm in the trenches coaching in groups, and I just love what I do. It's so much fun. And in the process of that, I've been on the journey too. And I always say that to my clients, I'm still in the journey too. I'm still we live in a culture that tells us our bodies are broken, or in a culture that tells us our bodies are wrong. So I'm always present to that in my own experience with my body. And now that I'm in perimenopause, hello again. Yeah. So it's just this ongoing evolution. And I think that's one of the biggest things I want my clients and people to hear, is that your relationship with your body is an ongoing practice. It's never ending. And I think that's been my experience as well.
Yeah. Well, that segues nicely to one of the things that we wanted to talk about. And that is this, you mentioned the culture that we're in, and the diet culture that we're in, and the diet culture of performance. And one of the things that, I would love you to speak to a little bit more is like, how did like building an awareness of the messages that we are giving ourselves? How have you dealt with that? How are you supporting your athletes to do that?
Well, there's lots to unpack there, and obviously we could literally spend hours doing it. But just the Coles Notes version is that, from a very young age, we live in a culture that really glorifies thin bodies, athletic bodies. And when I say athletic bodies, I mean a very narrow archetype of a body, very visible musculature, very thin, very lean, very enhanced muscles. Like, it's important to be able to see the muscles. But as we all know, as athletes, hopefully watching this, that athletes actually come in all shapes and sizes. And what diet culture does is kind of pulls us all into this narrow aesthetic. And then what ends up happening is that we're meant to have diversity. There's meant to be a diversity of bodies on this planet. There's actually a really wide range of bodies that are healthy, but we've been led to believe that it's this very narrow aesthetic that we should all be achieving. And so then the consequence is that we're all striving for this very narrow body type through diet, through exercise that doesn't maybe honor our bodies. And I see that in athletes all the time, that push. Like, when's the last time you took a rest day? When's the last time you took a rest period? And a lot of times it's like, I can't take any time off. I'm just, grind, go, blood, sweat, and tears, grit, go. So how about slow? Can we just back off? Can we recognize that, it's not about energy balance, energy in, energy out, just completely flawed. That's not how it works at all. And that diets just don't work. Changing, eating in a way to change your body is very destructive and actually doesn't honor your body. And it actually also doesn't often give you the best performance you could have. If you're underfed, it's not likely that you're performing very well or as optimally as you could. So diet culture comes from everywhere. It's kind of like this big umbrella term, but it's this mentality that there's a narrow aesthetic of body that we should all be striving towards, and that we can manipulate our bodies through exercise and through our nutrition. And, we should really do that at all costs. And if we don't do that, goodness sakes, well, we are somehow bad and wrong and failing and off the wagon. And it's so destructive to our relationship with food, to our relationship with body. And then that actually kind of balloons out into our other areas of our life. So it's not just our relationship with ourselves, it's our relationship with others. How many times if we're not feeling great about our bodies, how does that impact our relationships with others? How does that impact our self-esteem and our self-confidence so that we can go out and do the things we want to do in life beyond our athletics, beyond our health? And so it's such a big issue, and it's one we really need to address on a higher level. I was having a conversation the other day, and it was just like, weight is like this one last standing area that it seems like socially acceptable to be completely discriminatory. I'm in a group on Facebook. I won't name them, I won't call them out, but there was somebody posted, and it wasn't the owner of the group, but it's an athletic community. And somebody posted about the three different types of bodies: the gym body, the biking body, and the fishing body. And I commented because, we can all kind of jump to conclusions about what those bodies looked like. Again, diet culture. Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
But the fishing body, what does that mean? So what if somebody in that group, myself included, is probably more akin to the fishing body, but is actually a really strong athlete? And I identify as somebody who goes to the gym and identify as somebody who mountain bikes. And so what is that saying about that fishing body? It's saying it's bad, it's wrong, it's not acceptable, it's lazy, all these other connotations that diet culture inflicts upon body. And so, I actually commented and I started a little bit of a poop storm because I like to do that. But respectfully, I was like, well, what is this saying? And I actually find that really offensive. And maybe consider that that's actually something that is really derogatory towards other bodies. Can we not come from a place of body neutrality and body kindness and body respect?
Yeah. I absolutely, something like you said it, and like there's a lot there. And so I honor what you just said. And one of the words is this diversity of body that we can celebrate. I mean, underneath all of this, what you're talking about is, and I just love the analogy of start lines, because I mean, I love start lines and can't wait to get to them, but yeah, exactly. Right. And then often if you're in an endurance sport, or, when we can be all together, you're looking to your right and there's these beautiful women, and you're looking to your left and there's more beautiful women, and just lifting each other up.
Yeah.
Right. In this diversity, and being like, I know what you had to do to get here. Congratulations for being on the start line with me.
That's right.
And taking that though, and really expanding that to every single day, because we can do that. Like it's that's why we love sport. It's so concentrated on the start line. And because we know, like, you kind of see it, but that is every single day of celebration of lifting each other up. Yeah. So thank
absolutely.
you. In that message, you also had like athletes of every size can totally rock it. Like,
yes.
And if you're training, and like this idea of like, who is this athlete? And I, like maybe unpack that for us, because I want to know what you have to say on that.
Yeah, I think that, somewhere along the way, one of the pieces I've been kind of connecting to with lately is, who were you and where were you when you decided what an athlete looked like? When you decided what healthy looked like? Right? Like, so I'm going to ask you, so who were you and how old were you and where were you in your life?
Oh man. Well, I was a synchronized swimmer. And I started when I was 8 years old. Seriously, I had dreams of the Olympics. Carolyn Waldo was my icon, like total hero. And I would say I'm like you, at like from that young age, I was too big boned. And I took that all the way through until I was a professional triathlete, and I was still too big boned.
And I love that phrase. What does that even mean?
I don't know, but I had exactly right. So this is what I took, and
I'm grateful for my big bones, because when I'm older, that means that I'm not less likely to get osteoporosis. I don't know if that's true, but
I didn't have that.
Yeah.
And so
but again, diet culture.
Diet culture. Hence my mission now in life is to support women, so that we don't have to take this story into into this next phase of perimenopause, because we are going to find ourselves in a different body. Okay. So So you asked me, but now I'm going to turn it back to you. Okay.
So like so if you're watching this, like, who were you when you decided what an athlete was supposed to look like? And who is it that said to you, or, maybe not like just a person said to you this, but like culturally, somebody's implied that your body is not athletic because it doesn't fit this very narrow mold. But I like scan kind of the horizon of all the strong athletes I know. And I think of the athletes that have worked with me, or the athletes I've admired over the years. And I look to their bodies and I think, there are two women in my community who trained for, in the middle of a pandemic, a 50K trail race, decided that they just wanted to run 50K on the trail, and they trained for it. They did it properly. They did such a beautiful job training. And they would probably have the least unlikely bodies you would imagine for 50K trail runners. Yeah. And they were strong at the finish line. They were both uninjured. Like what an accomplishment to get to the end of a 50K trail run and not be injured. Yeah. I mean, you know, they had probably niggly body parts, but like holistically, they were well, they stayed healthy and injury free through their training. Like, and so you're telling me they're not athletes? Yeah, they are. Yeah. And so we need to really untangle these ideas that athletic or healthy looks a certain way. Athletic and healthy is about how you perform. Athletic and healthy is about how you define it as an individual. So for example, the example I often give in kind of the more health kind of conscious area, not necessarily for athletes, is, you know, for one person, definition of health might be to have the energy and vitality to get out there and get to start lines. For another person, it might be, you know, to have the energy and the stamina to deal with a chronic disease. Like there are so many different ways we define healthy and performance, and we need to understand that there's this kind of continuum of how we relate to our bodies. And at the end of the day, what we look like has nothing, almost nothing to do. I would say actually nothing, just nothing to do with our actual performance and health outcomes. If we want to talk health, let's talk about your blood pressure. Let's talk about your cholesterol. Let's talk about your blood glucose and the management of your blood glucose. Let's talk about really like actual tangible metrics, not the number on the scale, which is really your relationship with gravity. It really doesn't.
I love that.
Can I go there? I'm like going all in. I'm going all in. Okay,
just keep going.
So one of the big issues here, and one of the reasons we are all stuck here in this belief that body fat and equates with health, is that, so, you know, bigger bodies equals unhealthy, thin bodies equals healthy, is because there is a correlation between some significant health consequences and being in a bigger body. But, you know, in my stats 202 that I took way back in my kines, the professor could not have hammered this point home more if he tried. He went blue in the face trying to get it. Correlation does not imply causation. Yeah. And so just because two things are correlated does not mean one caused the other. I'm going to say that again. Just because two things go like this on a graph does not mean that one bumped the other. The example I love sharing here is that male pattern baldness and heart disease are correlated, but we do not have a war on male pattern baldness. Yeah. Do we? Like, it's ridiculous. But that's what we have relayed. That's how we look at obesity. That's how we look at any level of fatness. We have demonized it and we have made it this bad, wrong thing. In fact, when you look at the BMI charts, which are finally starting to be seen as the medical community as something we need to kind of completely ditch, thank the Lord. Yeah. But BMI was actually developed by a mathematician to evaluate regional health, and because of the correlation, divert health resources to areas where they thought maybe they would have more correlation towards health concerns. It wasn't because we wanted to rank people on the BMI chart, but because it became an easy way to plot and graph people, it started being adopted by research. It started being adopted by things like insurance companies because it was an easy way to plot somebody in and decide if they were healthy or not. Yeah. So there's flaws right from the beginning. But then in the mid-90s, they actually wanted to evaluate it. So they brought together this committee to evaluate it, all these bright thinkers right at the front of their fields. And they evaluated it. And they said was, actually, there's more evidence to show that being at a higher weight is more protective. We think the BMI chart should go up. Right. But do you know what they did? They bumped it down. And overnight, millions of people became categorized as obese. And Shazam, we have an obesity epidemic. And when they were asked why, it was because of pressure from diet industry. Like, I don't want to get conspiracy theorist about it, but there are some bigger factors at play here that have influenced how we feel about our bodies. Yeah. And it is mostly not not grounded in the science. And as athletes, we're like, bring the science. I want to understand why, and I want to understand the nuances, and I want to understand all the details. And also we need to remember too, it's the art, right? Application is the art.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, and
I just rambled.
The layer onto that is that the amount of science on women specifically is even smaller. And then if we actually layer onto that women in perimenopause or in menopause, again, even smaller.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I think that what you're doing here for us is really, really emphasizing like the point of let's look at this. Let's stop being in war with our bodies.
Yes.
One thing, I mean, really incredible point there.
Yeah.
We are not on war with our bodies anymore.
No.
Like we need to declare the war is over.
It's over.
It's over. And it's particularly, and let's bring this into, perimenopause and why this is so important that we have this discussion. Because most women are going to increase their body size in perimenopause. And so can you speak a little bit to that and how what you're seeing and your experience and
so I've looked into this because I'm in perimenopause, and I noticed a change in my body composition, and it was fairly marked fairly quickly for me at the beginning of perimenopause, which just happened to fall right at the beginning of the pandemic. Ooh, fun. And so I noticed this change. And so of course I started researching it, and I was like, wait a second, again, this correlation and causation issue is cropping up again. There is a definite curve that indicates that women in a perimenopausal phase in perimenopause at some point do increase their adiposity, and that's considered a normal thing that is happening, and there's a couple layers here. Number one, we demonize fat. So of course, the women that gains the weight in the perimenopausal phase, it has all sorts of stupid names like the menopause. Like, what is that even? Why do we need to like characterize it that way? But it's this weight gain that we're experiencing. There's this idea of, like you said, the war piece. It's like it's happening to us. Well, I actually kind of want to counter that and say, what if this is happening for us? What if, and so here's the science behind it. So when we go into perimenopause, we are seeing a decline in estrogen. That decline in estrogen is actually the kind of the cause of many of the symptoms we experience, is the hot flushes, the difficulty sleeping, the brain fog, the difficulty concentrating. And so, at lowered estrogen. So what your body's actually doing, because adipose tissue actually produces a little bit of estrogen, your body is increasing its other sources of estrogen by increasing body fat. Like, let that sink in for a minute. Your body is your body is so smart, so smart. It's like, this estrogen is lowered and it's not working for me. And so I'm going to adjust how it's going to accommodate, because our bodies are so cool that way. It's like if one muscle is weak, other muscles kind of come in and they're like, oh, I can pick up the slack. Our bodies are so cool that way. It's so wonderful. This is just another example of that, where our body's estrogen is lowered. And so our body fat increases in response to. Why are we trying to change that? That's happening for us, not to us. This is a good thing. And then the other factor at play is, as we age, in the later stages of aging, we see body fat go down and we see muscle mass go down. And so that extra body fat, if you keep it, is actually a little bit protective of good health. Because remember, as I said, the indication was not actually to go down in the body mass index, but we should be bumping it up, because a little bit more fat was actually protective of health in some areas. And so, there's that piece. And then the other piece is like, how much should I gain? I think that conversation is interesting here. And I haven't found any research. I have seen research around the estrogen and the reasons for it, and the theories behind why we have it. But then there's numbers out there, like, between 5 and 10 pounds is normal. Well, and 10 pounds percentage wise is a big difference on somebody who's like 100 pounds versus somebody who started at 185. So like to say 5 to 10 pounds, like for me, it was more like 15, you know? And so we need to stop putting ourselves in boxes and stop trying to like understand every little detail of it. What if this is happening for me, not to me?
It's really powerful. And I think that one of the, I mean, when you talked about what is right, or like, is it 5, is it 10? It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And I mean, if for anybody that has also had children, it's the same sort of thing. It's like, how much weight do you gain when you're pregnant? Well, some will gain a lot of weight, some won't gain very much. And some, like myself, I was like, I didn't have a very good relationship with the scale. So I was just like, as long as I'm healthy, I don't care. And I just allowed it to be. That was my first pregnancy. My second pregnancy, I was very proud. I couldn't wait to get onto the scale and be like, oh yes,
what's happening?
200. I was so excited. But that was a lot of personal work. So no, I really like, I'm just like, I'm taking it in, because diversity, stop the war. Athletes of every size can rock it. Believe, be compassionate.
Yes.
Like,
well, we haven't really talked about that compassionate relationship. You know, again, it's this kind of grit. As athletes, we tend to get into this blood, sweat, and tears, find your grit, push through at all costs. And it's like, are we listening to our bodies? Like, especially as we age, the other piece is like physiologically, we need more rest and recovery. Our nutritional needs change as well. There is some evidence to show that as we get into perimenopause and menopause, that women become a little bit more or likely to be insulin resistant. Okay, well then that might change how you want to ingest your carbohydrates. And again, I'm not going diety on you here, but like, but can you bring some mindfulness to noticing how you are responding to foods? We tend to get very, especially athletes, throwing us under the bus, we tend to get like quite regimented about how we're ingesting food. And as an intuitive eating counselor, I'm going to say, what if you actually just listened to your body? What if you actually just married this idea of what's happening inside my body? Can I tune in? Can I listen to my hunger, my fullness, my desires around food, my satisfaction around foods? Can I tune into my body's needs and then marry that with, you know, ideas around kind of health that are grounded around performance and feeling good, not around dieting or changing my body? Can I marry these two ideas and find this authentic version of health that resonates for me? Can I tune into my body and listen and respond that way? As opposed to just getting too hard and fast. Because when we get too hard and fast, what happens is that we, you know, follow these rules, eat this way, this, you know, eat this then, and eat da, 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 da. And then what happens when we falter from that plan? Like, because realistically, I know a lot of athletes are good at following plans as a culture. I think we're pretty good at that. But we're also humans. And life happens, you know, kids get sick, we have work deadlines, we get in the middle of a pandemic, and like, you know, the poop hits the fan. And what happens if we fall away from our plan? Well, how do we feel about ourselves when we fall away from the plan? Even if it's our training plan, how do we feel about ourselves? Most of us get highly self-critical. Most of us get highly unkind to ourselves. And then what's the internal cost of that stress? What's the internal cost of putting ourselves into this self-critical state? Well, what the research shows us is that the more we become self-critical, the less self-efficacy we have, the less belief we have in our capability to be successful. So I don't know about you, but motivation and self-efficacy are pretty important, right? If I want to be highly motivated, I need to believe that I can do something. And so as we become that inner jerk kind of starts piping up, that's really unhelpful to us actually being successful. And so, you know, coming back to this idea of, can I be self-compassionate? Can I meet myself with grace? Can I tune into my body and recognize that I need to be flexible and there's more nuances to it than just follow the plan and stick to the plan? Like, we need to be, again, if we step back, even in athletics, if we step back, you know, if we want to be successful in athletics, we need to be healthy first and foremost. And if we are pushing, grinding through not being responsive and respectful of our bodies, that's not healthy. And so we've broken our foundation, and we can't build a house on a broken foundation. We need to have health first before we can have a healthy structure of athleticism.
Yeah, and perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, like honestly, I know, like I have so many other things that I want to talk to this. So we are definitely gonna have to, I don't know, I just see another
part two
masterclass series, because the whole idea of intuitive eating, and then as we age and not,
yes.
we don't trust our thirst receptors as much. Like these are all the things I want to go into, but I am not going to be able to go into with you.
Oh, so much fun.
we will. We'll have to bring you into more discussions, because I absolutely adore them. So like, that was 30 minutes. So I have 3 questions. I know, right?
Okay.
Okay. So I have 3 questions I really want to ask you.
Okay.
That I'm asking everybody, every speaker.
Amazing.
So the first one is, give us one moment of courage.
When I realized I was in perimenopause and I'd started gaining weight and I didn't know what was happening, I started being really vulnerable with my community, and also with just publicly. I've written blogs about it. I've shared publicly. I'm like, I've gained weight and it's okay. Like, it's okay to gain weight. It's okay for your body to change, especially in the middle of a pandemic, but as also with perimenopause. And we need to stop demonizing it. And I was very all open and vulnerable about the fact that I'm having a hard time relating to my body. She looks a little different, and I don't recognize myself in the mirror. And so one of the things I started doing was filming myself when I was going for I go for ocean dips through the winter. And I started filming myself so I could get more familiar. And then I posted all those pictures and videos of myself going into the ocean in a bathing suit in the middle of winter in this bigger body of mine, so I could get comfy with her and find respect and experience celebration around her again. Because how cool is it that I get to go in the ocean every day in the middle of winter?
Okay, there's so many like levels of courage there. It's not even funny. Like, I am not going into the ocean. I am such a cold water wimp, but that is true courage. So thank you.
I love it on so many levels. Anyway, that's another conversation too.
Another one. I know you and Susan Simmons. Another person who we just gotta bring on into the world. Tell us one thing that you are grateful for right now.
It sounds so cheesy, but this conversation, oh my goodness. I'm grateful for you and having this conversation, and you sharing these ideas and bringing these ideas to the forefront to so many women and so many athletes who are going to hear this and be like, I don't have to stress about my body anymore. I can just let that go, because my life is worth so much more than all this stress and pain and worry and everything I've been carrying around it. So I'm grateful for that.
I am, well, you know how I feel about you. So all right. And the last question is, give me one thing that you would say to your younger, I know that perimenopause only started so long ago, but what is one thing you already can say to yourself, that your younger self?
I think this spans my entire life. This isn't happening to you. This is happening for you. And it actually gets me like a little emotional, but I think about my story, and I think about being that little girl at 5 and being uncomfortable in my skin. I think about the little girl at 8 that was putting herself on her first diet. I think about traveling through eating disorder. I think about getting to the start line and the finish line of Ironman. I think about all of the experiences I've had, good, bad, and everything in between. And they have helped form me into who I am today, and given me the voice I have. And I wouldn't change a thing. And it's all happened for me, including this latest phase.
Well, thank goodness the world has you and has your voice. And you're so powerful. So I thank you for being so generous too, from your moment of courage that you are putting out there into the world and saying, this is what it takes, and I'm here. I love it. Is there something that, I want to make sure that there's something that you want to say or share about how people can find you, and like, links will be there.
For sure. Go to the links and follow me. I think my approach to coaching is, I often say to people, and I'm like the worst salesperson ever. I would say, like, you have to be ready for intuitive eating. You have to be ready to kind of let go of these constraints of diet culture, and not everybody's ready. And so I just invite you to follow me and connect with me. Facebook, Instagram. You can check out my blog. I share a lot on my blog, and which is superu.ca. And if you're inspired by what you see, then let's connect. But I just hope that, I like to think of like what I do on social media and through my blog is like I'm just planting seeds.
Yeah.
I'm just planting all sorts of seeds, and I hope that a seed was planted for you today, and that you started to kind of maybe look at your body in a slightly different way, a more compassionate, kind, respectful way, and that you maybe carry that forward.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I know you've done that. So thank you for that and being so generous. And until next time, because there will be a next time, Gillian.
Let's do it. I love it.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.